And we are live. Thank you for joining us for this first 2025 series where we will tackle different brand technology topics. I am honored to be not alone for this one. We have Stefan. So Stefan will pass the ball to you to present yourself in a minute, and we'll have also joining us Mokhtar from Mangabe. So thank you both for joining us. And just for those who doesn't know me, my name is Haider. I lead a team in Switzerland called Kainjoo. We are tackling what I call brand tech topics, which is mostly focused on commercial operation for globally regulated industries. So spent quite a bunch of years, and we decided to come on stage and to bring another type of voice, a voice that is hands-on, understands the complexity of those organizations, understand also the importance of those organizations to adopt and scale emerging technologies and channels, such as the buzzwords of the year, which is AI. So I will be presenting and revealing on this presentation a maturity assessment framework that we've been working on during the summer. We had the chance to have 4 companies trusting us to adapt that maturity assessment framework to really be down to us. And I wanted to have 2 external views on this. One from an R&D perspective, which is represented today by Stefan, who spent quite some time at Roche and on digital therapeutics and has a great extensive experience on that. And I wanted also to have a sanity check from the technology side. And Mokhtar, you're going to represent, the reality of the technology, because I know you're doing it every day. So without further ado, I'll start with you, Stefan. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, thanks, Haider, for having me. So hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Ranjan, and as Haider mentioned, I've been working at Roche on the R&D side in the space of digital health and AI, and building kind of internal capabilities to help the adoption of new technologies in our clinical trials. And now, most recently, I'm kind of on my own doing some advising and consulting for pharma companies to build that muscle and that capability, and what are the steps needed to really kind of first inspire your people to be able to embrace the new change, and then how to take action and then really thrive and flourish with these new capabilities. So looking forward to this discussion and looking forward to bringing the kind of the comparison from an R&D lens.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. And Mokhtar, please tell us more about you.
Thanks, Haider. Thanks for having me for this discussion. So my name is Mokhtar Diallo. I'm leading Mangabe, which is a 3-year-old organization dedicated to data for pharma, and we help pharma to unify their data because we believe it's really the foundation for any intelligence, should it be business intelligence or artificial intelligence nowadays. I've been in pharma for close to 20 years, and having different roles, and finishing my career there at Sanofi as a business intelligence lead for the company globally, and really pleased to having this discussion with you and Stefan, and be there to comment from a technology point of view and from a data point of view what it means to mature on the way of AI excellence.
Thank you, Mokhtar. And before I start, just to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can ask it on the comment section. We'll be monitoring those. And also, if you want to reach out later on, we'll have the details of Mokhtar, myself, and Stefan in the description of the event or in the comment section of the event. And at the end, we will basically just screen if there is any question you want to ask, please do. So I will ask my colleagues to interject during the presentation if they spot something, and I will prompt them as well if they see something. The idea here is not to reinvent the wheel, but to concretely showcase an approach. So this is what we wanted to reveal today, which is a pretty big step for not only us, but also organizations that are trying to tackle this. So to just tell you more about our firm, so we've been at it for the last almost 15 years now. So I call that company kind of the dark kitchen of the industry, because we've been in so many streams in so many companies that even some of you don't know that we were behind a tier 2 provider and so on. But yeah, we've gained a lot of experience and also memory. I will call it even more than experience. It's a muscle memory for the industry. And in some cases, it has been really an interesting cross-fertilization for the industry to take what works in the TA to another. Again, like I said in the intro, commercial operation focused. Why I wanted to jump into that topic, because a few months back, I was working on a different conversation with the venture capital arm of our company, and we discovered that slide from McKinsey. And that slide from McKinsey, and we were preparing this talk, we were smiling with Stefan. Some pretty interesting things are emerging from that slide. First of all, the usual suspect: research and discovery, clinical development. I mean, you've seen AI there, and Stefan might even add some on this in silico modeling, in clinical trials, in basically any stream that R&D has. They've been pretty much at it for the last 15 years. So this is not a new era for them. It's a continuation. But for some reason, whenever I go to a commercial operation teams and whenever there is a discussion with AI and technology, it's a little bit more, I will not call it fluffy, but it's less structured. Let's call it that like this. And it's a little bit in the air. Everyone has its own definition. We don't know what good looks like. And it's particular for the pharma industry, because if you compare banks or insurances, they are regulated as well, but they have a very good understanding of the layers that needs to be working together, where to play and where to win with this transformation or these emerging technologies. So I wanted to focus the conversation on commercial operations and medical affairs to understand how can we establish a transformational roadmap that will absorb and spool AI in the current streams. And the second piece, which is going to interest the business leaders and the people who have to demonstrate a business impact, it's actually one of the biggest pool of value. And this data is not coming from us, it's coming from McKinsey, which a lot of your senior leadership loves. And this is true. There is the best bang for your buck is in the commercial operations, surprisingly. And this is where there is the least amount of adoption of those potential opportunities. So this is where we wanted to also come back on potential example. What does it mean for sales? What does it mean for events or call planning? Scientific affairs, events, symposium, influencer management. When it comes to scientific share of voice, or marketing, right? Creating campaigns, advertising, and that kind of thing. So a lot of this is surprising, and the opportunity is huge. So to go into maybe before we go into the model, just to have your reaction, Stefan, because it was kind of funny to see you smile when we prepared this. What does it tell you when you see such a slide? You're on mute, Stefan, I think, yeah.
Yeah, classic mute mistake. No, I think what caught my attention is your comment about the adoption in the commercial setting. Yeah, I think if I look at across industries, probably commercial is where you're seeing actually the most transformation happening with the generative AI capabilities. And given where the technology is moving and how pervasive it is becoming, I think it's critical for organizations to be really reimagining how work gets done and how these tools are integrated into the day-to-day work.
Yeah, it's surprised many people when I tell them that we are lagging behind big time compared to R&D, and you should actually talk to R&D people. I think sometimes in the work we did the last 6 months, the answers when we did the audit, the answer were in the R&D department. They were already having the entire framework, and good for those type of company. IT was actually the link to transfer the experiences and mistakes to roll out, from one country to another. So it's interesting to see how siloed it is when you see such a slide. So moving on, so where we ended up after doing this pilot project with four companies, we ended up having 4 big families of, I would say, criteria that we analyzed, and the 4 ones are people, right, where it is about expertise or experience of the team, and when I say the team, it's the extended teams. It's not just the employee and staff; it could be consultant as well. And then you have also the culture of the company, the way the company is wired. And not all pharma companies are wired to become a deep tech company. You can be a user of AI because you're basically going from a dumb phone to a smartphone and you're just going to do the same job, just in a faster, less cumbersome way. But you're going also to need a culture shift if you want to create services that are AI powered and really launch services that have a digital therapeutics that has predictability and much more, I would say, intelligence power to bring into to the table. So that is the people side. We have a purpose side as well. So why are we doing this? What are we trying to be? And that comes also with the buying and the vision from leadership. And in some cases, the vision is we need to do AI because the board wanted to have a pilot project, and that's kind of a misguided way of going through. You need to talk, exchange, benchmark, and identify what's your way of adopting this. And there is no one way. There is not a Microsoft way, an Azure way, or AWS way. There is like your way of doing this, and you need to identify it. And of course, there is the capability of having an external ecosystem. So you've seen with the MCPs and the way now the world is integrated with APIs and so on. So you will have to integrate with a wider ecosystem. And I've been pretty vocal since 10 years already on not just digital twins, but the AI to AI model as a microservice model. And I think now it's becoming more clear where you will have, a highway with two direction where you're going to send value and you're going to receive value, and that needs to have a purpose. And the last piece is one of the last piece is a process piece, which is not so complex. To be honest, we've been pretty surprised at the quality and the maturity of organization, understanding how to be ethical, how to be careful with the ESG footprint, monitoring all of those questions. I think our industry, at least the pharma industry, is pretty good at regulations and compliance, so that's not a surprise. And the platform piece is also pretty well served because the industry is connected to enterprise class providers. And those guys have already done a pretty good job in the past 15 years building data infrastructures, and now bringing layers for enabling AI. It's just not really a technological issue or problem. It's mostly in our understanding, a people and purpose lack of maturity. When you see this, Mokhtar, what pops up when you see such a slide where in the feedback that I gave? Do you see something similar with the work you do at Mangabe and or your expertise that you had, in the pharma industry back then?
Yeah, what is striking me in what you're telling is the fact that there is a need for a vision around AI that drives the maturity curve. AI is everywhere today. Everyone has access to AI technology nowadays. It's how you create a purpose around it and how you move it towards a business goal or an ethical goal or a cultural goal in your company. I've been in one company where the CEO for a long period of time had this vision around AI and has invested a lot to move the company towards an AI-driven company. And I think this is not necessarily a CEO role to drive this, but there is a need to have in such company an incarnation of that. It cannot be a randomized evolution. It has to start from a vision. So I would say the maturity score, the purpose is really, from my point of view, the driver. all the rest.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, at least from, well, I mean, we only benchmarked few pharma companies, but the idea tomorrow, I mean, is for us to have a database where we can compare companies together in terms of size and in terms of, for example, regions, departments. So we wanted to kind of also structure this maturity assessment score so that companies and leaders can compare themselves. The other piece also that we felt could be interesting is comparing with other industries. I mean, Stefan, you mentioned in our preparation that indeed some other industries are better suited, and understanding where actually those companies did a better job for the adoption. And the commercial operation side, you mentioned rightly so that marketing seems better served by those tools in FMCG brands because maybe they had high velocity, complex campaign, like the need with social media marketing and so on is so great that those tools have been making a difference. While in pharma, we're not really known for big Instagram campaign, right? So it's a little bit, I will not say less important, but we don't see the burning platform the same way. So moving on, let me just switch to the next point is a consensus or like a summary of the points that we identify in our different audits. And they are very different in terms of their frequency, but at least they all came at least once in our analysis. So goals are defined. So that is the striking one that is the primary cause of misfire, where your organization is saying, yeah, let's freeze the budget or let's postpone it because the goals aren't defined well. That came because there is no clear scalability or killability switch on the pilot when you have an AI pilot. And also some people don't even like the word AI because it's like digital 10 years ago. Everything is AI, everything is digital. But in that particular case, there was so much ambiguity on AI that people didn't know if it was something that is made for employees to have a better experience or for actually customers to have, like in our case, for example, HCPs have a better experience. So it was not clear. And what good looks like really matters to build a good project charter here. The second piece that is clearly coming to all companies is there is not a real clear support from leadership. I'm not saying that you have a sponsor that is signing the budget. I'm speaking a long-term P&L approved type of play. And here it's also a little bit, yeah, let's test it out and see what happens. That is also one of the reasons we found project didn't scale. This kind of funny way. We wrote an AI project. It was just really conflicting with many best practices. And also something that is interesting is people have misconception. When they hear AI, they think we can do something quick and dirty, and that good enough. And that is a bootstrap mindset. Yeah, you want to do something, we can do a prototype in 4 weeks. Yeah, let's use AI. And on the other spectrum, whenever there is like real charter, people say, oh no, we need to actually invest millions into this. And there is a bit of a gap, and that ambiguity creates fear. And that's something we identified. The third point is the technical expertise. So when I say technical expertise is not just the IT expertise, but also the understanding of the solution you have in your hand as a commercial leader, marketing leader. And that often is pushed away to an agency or to a vendor, which means for most of the marketer we audited, for them, it was a bit like, oh, I know I have something, but I don't know how to use it if I had to do it myself. So this is also the talent shortage is real. A lot of the people who are curious and have the culture of adopting those new way of doing marketing and sales are not enough inside the organization. And that creates kind of a no man's land in the middle. And on the other side, we have also a fear that we cannot do it because there is no validation on the SOPs of what can we do. while we said the teams are pretty clear on what to do, and when they do those guidelines, they're pretty good. There are also a lack of speed and deliverability of those guidelines, and it makes it very, very cumbersome for some companies to basically say, we can't move. So that is not good, and that has slowed also other functions like procurement or IT to work with faster moving companies like startups. That is a problem because most of the technologies, people had them in sight but couldn't process them, and they use actually creative agencies or existing vendors to push these startups to contract with them, which is also not super compliant in a way. The point number 5 is data that exists but not in an interoperable way. When we say data, for example, is like, okay, you are doing a social media listening project and you have millions of data that is sitting in your social listening tool, but somehow you don't have a way to extract that data through the API because the API blocks you and you don't have enough power to use that data and do something with it. So you're kind of having data, but it is stuck and frozen and you cannot make it liquid. That is a problem. And also the data in different structures because of the way organizations are in regions. So you have one tool that does a CRM on one hand, and then you have another tool that is kind of a Excel spreadsheet. And so we have systems that are smart enough to do it, but somehow the guy who put the system in place disappeared 2 years ago, and you end up like having just a void. That was pretty painful for the organization. That comes from the infrastructure and data piece. And last, it's a pretty surprising. I was personally surprised from this. Is people didn't even want to speak about AI. They were like saying, "I'm tired of it. I did it. I tried it. It's not perfect." Mostly in the scientific affairs team, I have to say, if I have to pinpoint, there were a lot of problem linked to the exhaustivity of the response. And not just doing summaries, but basically being very, very exhaustive. And those tools were not to the maturity the scientific affairs team wanted. So they got frustrated. So that's another point. So I'll just stop here. Maybe coming back to you, Mokhtar, when you see this picture that we managed to collect in the last 6 months, what is striking for you? What makes you like go, wow, okay, I didn't expect that? And what is basically for you like something you concur?
Yes, I think the one that I was expecting, because I see it every day and I've been seeing it very closely for years in many companies across different organizations, is really your point number 5, the fact that data is not interoperable. And this is striking me how, if you want, how difficult it is for companies to really take their data seriously in such a way that it could be used more efficiently and faster and cheaper for driving performance with AI nowadays. And that's something that is really striking me. I really don't understand it. I don't know whether it's cultural, whether it's a question of technology, investment, drive from the culture. But especially in the commercial operations, I think that there is a transformation that didn't happen fully. You talked about the fact that we have one CRM, which is still a dream for many, many organizations, pharma, to have
Yes,
one CRM globally. It makes me think about the giant with feet of clay, you see.
Yeah.
And that's the one that is for me the still a battle for pharma companies that condemn them to baby initiatives when it comes to AI, or to suffer a lot when they want to really drive a really globalized project with AI. And that's really for me the a point that seems to be really small, but that is really a pain for a lot of people driving performance in commercial operations.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And you, Stefan, what's striking you?
So I would say for me, I think what you've identified, nothing is new for me at least. But what I would emphasize is your number one is spot on.
Yeah.
I think we've seen this, and this is probably what maybe pains me a little bit, is that maybe we're not learning from past technology curves where we always jump for the shiny object and we don't pay attention to what is the core problem we're trying to solve, right? And so, to Mokhtar, your comment, we've been talking about having access to data probably for the last 20 years now. But we're still talking about it today when in reality, the tools exist. It comes back to, are we clear on what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then are we addressing from a leadership standpoint, the right mindset in our people? And I think you called it out earlier, Haider, that the people is probably the most important piece. And so I would say, like, if there's anything on this slide, it's your number one and number two that you got to focus on. The rest will follow.
Yeah.
If you don't get right number one and number two, don't invest time.
Which means we learn nothing from the digital transformation we got, in 2010, 2015. I feel honestly when I was reviewing those slides, and I felt like shit, I've seen those slides somewhere. It's just, instead of putting social media and community and Web 2 or whatever, it's just moved,
Exactly.
10 years. Yeah. So the shiny object is still very powerful.
I can rebound on that. I think that, yes, this is, I would say that behind the fact that we say goals are undefined, I would say this generates a lack of focus. What is the real focus? What is the number one thing you want to achieve? And that is a no concession that will have to be delivered. Should it be a small thing, technology-wise and so on, but with high impact? And when we see about AI, I agree with that. It's really an ocean of initiatives. We try to burn the ocean, but we don't really try to understand what's the best, what's the most impactful initiative on which I will really build all my muscles. And from that will derive a change in culture that will be the example everyone will look at to transform their work. We lost Ada, but that the lack of focus is really something that you can see a lot in companies where you have competing initiatives, and even though those companies, some of them are really big and wealthy and really well resourced, the lack of focus is generating this lack of efficiency. And that's your number one. I completely agree with that. The fact that there is a lack of clear goals, a lack of purpose that comes back to your first.
I would agree, Mokhtar. I think that there's.
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected a bit. Continue.
We can hear you, Stefan.
Yeah, I would agree, Mokhtar. I think focus is, focus is missing sometimes. I think we try to tackle a lot of different problems at the same time. And I think this is where leadership can play a key role in really identifying, like, what are the problems as an organization we need to tackle, and then how does the organization get behind and utilize all available forms of technology to address those problems. And rather than experimenting with tons of different ideas and then not really seeing anything move from pilot to scale, right? And I think we've had this experience where there's a lot of pilots and we get tired of it and no wide scale adoption. And I think this is why, for me, the role leadership plays is extremely important in articulating what are the problems that we as an organization are getting behind, and then giving that sustainability for the teams to actually move past the pilot stage and not pulling the plug too soon.
Yep. And on that, Stefan, I don't know if you hear me, because I got just disconnected a few seconds. Is my mic okay? Yeah, you can hear me. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I've seen now teams going, from board to senior leadership to actually do courses and taking classes on this, because behind the word AI, there is also sustainability, ESG, and there is a lot of pressure to trace if your money is getting an impact on, the sustainability goals. And you're also creating more pressure on that angle of the company, which your investors are expecting you to do the right thing. So it's not just an AI technology play to have better margin and penetrate those markets better and be more efficient. It's also from a transformation perspective. Are we having an enabler that is not dooming the company tomorrow for the next 5-10 years, right? So that's an important pool,
right,
of pressure. Yeah. So just for the sake of time, I don't want to lag a little bit here. So I just wanted to give a concrete step which will help you wherever you are, wherever you're thinking of stepping into that journey, is you need to map all your processes. Normally, it should have been done already by someone in your company. Your process should be mapped. Once you map the process in the handshake between either a human or a system, you're going to identify the data that are either created or produced, the data that are transformed and distributed, and you're going to be able to list those opportunities or risk. Sometimes for legal reason, you cannot even touch them. And you're going to be able to see where the technology and the opportunities brought by the technology can do some of the process faster. And someone from a pharma company told me they understood that AI is fast, but not smart. So when they started to shift the mindset to say, oh, anything that can go faster than me, I can give it to the machine. And if this is well structured, it can reproduce it. This is where they started to identify the low-hanging fruit. And then, of course, this field is changing, like Mokhtar said, it's changing every month. There is a new wave of surprises. They get smarter, right? But it's also a question of what do you tackle first. So once you have a process, identify the pools of opportunities and do it step by step. And you might actually learn from, if you start on that end, you might actually learn something about the next wave. You might see that the process is not right. You need to change the process. You might see that the platform is not right. You might need to update, with your IT and your vendors, the platform aspect. And you might see that you need talent that can actually do this. You might need a data scientist. Who knows? You might need a data annotator. You might need a team to actually annotate the data, which is going to be a super, super non-techie process. It's humans saying, educating what's good, what's not good. So that's all of this is a low-hanging fruit for you. Any department from scientific affairs, medical, marketing, sales can do that. And then basically what's in it for you. And usually people they jump on a project or use case that is close to the heart. But if you dezoom, you have first to get the governance and data infrastructure right, because otherwise there is no point of building on sand. Then you start to have a little bit of excitement when you start creating your article. And this is usually when marketing smiles. They say, oh, I can be faster than my agency doing this. But it still requires you to do it in the premises of a pharma company, which means the legal medical reviews, the digital asset management platform. And if you're having Gen AI there, you need to create PDFs to go to Promomats or Primo, whatever, right? So you have to follow those process. Back to my last slide. So content and campaigns, yes, you can tremendously reduce time to creation, time to market. I'll give an example of social media advertising where you have like 20 formats. And yes, an AI can actually, on Adobe, you can easily get, or Figma will do the same. You can easily get the right size in one go, but that is going to be just one example. And then obviously where we see the experience getting exciting is when you are becoming an answer engine and when context is key. So it means that you're not pushing, you're not in the classical inbound marketing or outbound marketing play. It's a different experience where whenever the doctor needs something, he needs to have the answer right now because he sees a patient in 5 minutes. You are the rendezvous point. You manage to be the answer. And that is the level of answers, engine generation you need to be. But also on the service side, this is also where we see content is getting less and less consumed, more short format video that are produced by AI. And services is where you really see a flux of usage, where you have a real tool that saves times to a doctor. This is where it's going to be interesting. So to achieve all of that, you need to rethink the experience. Obviously, this is the more complicated on the external side. And you need to be orchestrating much more AI agents in a way than just having one ChatGPT-like experience. So the automation is going to be more complex, and that's why you need to have also the fuel for that automation. It's going to have structured data, structured instructions, and, for example, rack systems that are understanding the way you want it to work. So that is going to be a pretty complex journey if you miss the first steps. That's basically the message of that slide. And the company who hired us to understand why they failed were basically mostly either too much focus on that and never grow from that experience, or basically a misfire on this first step. Based on that, I just want to jump to the next slide to have a quick example. On this, what worked well for this pharma company was the implementation of one primitive function. We really saw that what they excel at doing is doing one pain point to solve, doing it well, scaling it in multiple countries. This was, I think it was 10 countries to roll out. And it was super, 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 super well executed because they focused on one primitive function. And they really talked like almost a startup. They were having a product owner. They developed a feature really for maximum scalability. And I like the concept of wrapping this feature for the investigator. This was for clinical trials. And I like the fact that they said, we want to conquer the heart and minds of our investigators, and behind the scenes, whatever it is we have to bring, we'll plug it. And I think it was a very agile way of bringing startups, big tech, to the table. I know this topic is close to your heart, Stefan, and I'm pretty sure you played with that wrapping approach, or at least something similar. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the framework that I tend to think about when to use solutions is looking at kind of a 2x2 on complexity and autonomy. And here's an example where the complexity is low, and probably the autonomy is also relatively low for you to kind of offer something that, as you mentioned, from a service standpoint, increases the level of engagement that you can get with your customers. And so really kind of finding those areas where you can start driving that adoption, driving that scale makes a lot of sense. Now, when the complexity is high, then you need to spend a little bit more time. That's when you need to be probably investing a little bit more, time learning, trying different things before you go more broad, because you may have to reimagine some of your workflows or split things up into some of the lower complexity tasks to some of the high complexity tasks. But I think, frankly, there's a lot of opportunities. The challenge I think most organizations are facing is, probably getting overwhelmed with what's possible. And I think what you're highlighting here is like start somewhere concrete, build that muscle, build that confidence, and then expand so you don't get overwhelmed by all of the change at once.
Correct. Now that's a good summary. And also what we identified as a success factor is testing fast, because some of the sub features that are building the experience are not visible, but they can actually also make the difference in terms of the quality of the answers generated. So in this case, for example, we know that the learning modules, the micro learning modules that were associated with the bot were particularly useful to the adoption of the investigators on one hand, because it really created not only an interface where you can interrogate data, it actually educated on how to extract the best insight from the data. And this is how, by repetition, when you come 5 minutes a day and do those little gimmicks, it really helps the project to be a successful project more than a successful tool, if that makes sense. Right? The project was the entire adoption of that platform, so that they maximize the screening and the recruitment of patients. And to continue on that, one of the other projects we worked on, which was pretty interesting, and this was for more of a institution or like a healthcare agency for government. In this case, the idea was also to prepare the field for tomorrow's players to build smarter system on top of public data or private data. And I liked this concept of creating data stores that are not just for you as a pharma company, but potentially that a startup can interrogate your data store that you created or prepared for another purpose, but they can tap into it, augment it, and bring you even more value to your initial data points. And on the other hand, that creates a catalog of services that you could not have even imagined creating in the first place. It's like the App Store of Apple, right? You're creating yourself the conditions for having stakeholders bringing value to you, and that requires you to have the data infrastructure and the vision to enable this inside the company. So what will you say, Mokhtar, when you see such a claim that I made? Do you see the maturity of the industry being there? Have you witnessed some progress? What do you see?
There is definitely a progress towards data alignment and the build of global foundations for data sources that were not as important to deal with a while ago. We used to have a lot of strong financial or supply chain systems, and that was really something that was even rare in pharma. We have a consolidation, an ongoing consolidation of commercial data, starting with CRM data, the arrival of Viva or other like easy to implement systems have accelerated the move towards globalization of it, but there is still a lot of data. Let's say 90% of the important data is external data to pharma. So the capacity to pharma to govern data that they don't create, that they don't control, to internalize that, and to put on top of that a system is still a big challenge for companies that condemn them to experiment AI capabilities in a more localized fashion. So we're going to experiment in France, or we're going to experiment in Germany, because a lot of those data sources are really local data sources. So that's still of a big challenge for companies. if their ambition is to centralize their AI capability from a global point of view, but it's still an opportunity for local operations to innovate and be on top of their data. So it's how you balance between a very global governance and the capacity for operations to drive AI, because at some point in time, we talk about driving operational efficiency, business efficiency, and the combination of AI and external data that is really local, as opposed to governed data like CRM or finance, etc., drives the need to think about the business and data governance in a different way. So how you give more power to, local operations, while you keep a framework that allows you to monitor and govern your investment into AI, is probably one of the biggest challenge I can see in companies to foster efficiency, to allow companies to drive efficiency, because at the end of that's what we need to leverage data and technology to deliver business efficiency, but not losing the control, not losing the capacity to, as we said before, to drive a sustainable goal, a sustainable purpose, a sustainable focus for the whole company. So that's really
I mean, if you're in the work of transformation, I mean, it has been always, I say, I've been vocal about AI not being a revolution. I was like saying there shouldn't be a digital department or an AI department, because these are DNA strains of an organization. It's going to be, in the middle. But it's true that an organization needs to name something to absorb it. It's easier for an organization to say they are basically de-risking this asset so that we can make it a commodity. It's like you were saying 20 years ago, do we need a corporate website, right? That we don't even talk about it. It's right, having a website for a company is so normal. But 20 years ago, people was looking at, do we need a blog? Do we need a press section? That kind of thing, right? And AI right now is there is a different thing. It's really, for me, where the companies have no choice to tackle it. Is really like the smartphone experience. You're going to have sales rep writing emails that are going to be AI defined, and that sales rep is going to be better at closing or having a better day, managing his workload, and you're going to have the same sales rep going from 200 HCPs per territory to 2,000, because he's going to manage a bigger territory. So he's going to, if the bonus scheme is following, which is not going to be always the case, but if you follow that sales rep, he's going to have a blast. He's going to spend his time thinking how to maximize his 2,000 HCP territory. He's going to be able to call and orchestrate what marketing has prepared for him, and he's going to push or fuel content that Scientific Affairs has created for him. So I think, you see, so I'm not so much deceptive like I was 2 years ago when I've seen a lot of fluff. Right now, it seems to me that we're approaching to a world where it's a little bit like touchable, that experience, that feel from the employee experience is getting there. What I can see that is a little bit less well made is on the digital health side, the digital therapeutic side, like a pharma company trying to really be a market leader on the deep tech side. And this is where I see more medtech and genomics performing better than pharma, to be honest. But yeah, so just to move on just on where do we interpret the McKinsey, BCG, Gartner maturity ladder that we got during our work. So what we ended up having to create a vocabulary internally, and this was important for senior leadership because they wanted to be able to compare and identify regions, franchises, departments, and so on. It seems that it takes at least a year for a pharma company to go from I might want to do it to we tested something and this is what we learn. It takes time. It's not 3 months. It takes really time to go from zero to a project, and going from we know what good looks like, we know what are the goals, to a concrete felt impact in a market or in a business function. That is another 2 years or year and a half that is gone, because you need a cycle. Like if you look at a sales team, they need to have a sales cycle to go through to actually see and feel it. Marketing could be a bit faster because campaigns are usually 3-6 months, but at least a sales team will have to take some time to chew this. When we call systemic here, it means that you start to really have a pure player type of stance. You're basically saying, I'm going to have a predictable analysis tool. I'm going to have a thick data versus big data play here. Like you're going to be leveraging that data really, really better. And here, this is also where we see people not necessarily building it. They rent it. They buy it. They don't need to build everything. And I think this is back to the example. And the shaper will be companies that have potentially even acquired an AI company within them. So this is happening, right? M&A is booming in this field, and they don't acquire just the technology, they acquire the team. So there is an interesting comparison to do with banks, where you have two class of players. You have banks that are having full IT teams, to build this internally, and they literally, just build it, right? They're self-autonomous on this. And you have banks that basically acquires. They keep acquiring tech companies. On this, basically, Stefan, I wanted to hear from you the watch outs or the things that maybe we've missed when we've done this exercise. Can you bring us some wisdom?
I think from a kind of at an organizational level, I think the timeline seems like reasonable just given the pace. But what I would challenge is your first two phases really should should move fairly quickly. You need to accelerate that because this is no longer a nice to have. Mm-hmm. This is a capability that you need embedded in the organization, and the longer you wait, the chances are you're going to fall behind. And so I think for me, when I think about AI maturity for an organization, it's I compare it to just like using email as your day-to-day productivity tool. You would never have a conversation in your organization of whether somebody should be using email or not, and revert back to the paper memo that we used to use, right? And I think that is going to be the future, where it's going to be embedded in everything that we do. And the question is your workforce equipped to do that? And which is where I think for me, the awareness and the experimentation part
should be faster.
Has to move much faster than 9 months.
Yeah.
If you're taking 9 months to get there, you're falling behind.
Yeah,
and
I tend
this
to
is
agree
where
with
I would
you.
encourage those that are listening, reach out if you want to understand how to accelerate that. But for me, what I've seen, what works well is the leader sets the tone. The leader models that experimentation, and then the rest of the organization kind of embraces it.
That's a good point. I agree. It really should be that way. But indeed, if you look at the reality of the industry and the steering committees and so on, it's not fit for purpose yet for many organizations. So it starts with the top, like you said in your from a comment. Yeah. And I know that some of your past colleagues that are like in different organization in R&D that shifted to commercial, they promote the idea of building next to campus. It's like not being too close to the mothership, but basically just being in the garden. Like being in a separate entity, owned 100% by the company. Experimenting, doing things. Pulling resources from different departments, like contaminating the company in a way, in a secured environment, out of the politics, out of the steering committees, out of the complexity of the company, which enable this to get to the 3 months type, or much faster. Yeah.
Cool. This goes back to that goals.
Yeah.
The goals kind of topic, right? If you know clearly what your goals are, you can then architect your organization to kind of either integrate the learning into your core operations or keep it, kind of protected for a while to be able to kind of build that muscle before you bring that in. But it's ultimately a choice that organizations need to make. Otherwise, you run the risk of just creating internal friction that is not worthwhile at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And just one thing that we identified, because this was a question that came in our exercise, is how do we monitor with numbers the adoption? Is it in numbers of investment made in CapEx, OpEx? Is it in terms of the number of people who got the training? So it's interesting to hear that many companies have different ways of monitoring this. We identified across the four, the one that struck people is the presence of an intelligence system that can automate and scale, tasks of everyday tasks in a faster way than before. It means like if you start really implementing AI to change a process, how many of that process is AI driven or has a bit of intelligence? And people were surprised to see that 70% of a transformation is pretty high, but it's also coming to the point of having Microsoft and AWS and Salesforce bringing those tools anyway to the company. So those processes, those routines are already SaaS driven. And what a SaaS is going to become tomorrow, at least from what we've heard when we interviewed those companies, they are basically positioning those SaaS as an operating system for the function. It's like your Microsoft Windows for sales rep. And that is going to be, for example, Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics. And this is kind of why we see the adoption of the end user getting pretty high, because they're not going to feel that this is going to be working against them. It's going to be part of the interface. Everyone's going to use it. So when you see that claim, Mokhtar, and when you see, for example, the agility required, we talked about agility quite a lot in this conversation. As a wrap-up, how do you recommend to the people who listen to this to be faster and more agile at adopting the technology, the platform, but also the process and also the people side of things?
I mean, I agree with Stefan when we talk about AI. We talk about a technology that is, if you want, playing a role in many different places. He was talking about emails. A lot of people are using AI to write their emails. We were talking about before about automation and the fact that it doesn't change the paradigm of Salesforce automation or marketing automation. It's a new brick that allows to finally, accelerate or be more efficient delivering content to clients and customers. So at the end of the day, I would say that the use of AI in companies needs two things. The first thing is, as we said before, a goal, focus, something that is driven by a vision. And the second is really a governance around it. Because we're talking about regulated industries. We have many GXP here that you're talking about. We focused on the business side, but we have GXP adjacent use cases, market research, clinical trials, supply chain, and AI needs to be driven as well with a lot of respect of different regulations that are nowadays put in place by the FDA, the EMA, and so on. So vision, governance, those are really like the two pillars. And coming back to the email example that is really striking me, day-to-day experience. People need to know what is AI in order to be inspired by what it can deliver. Because AI by itself is a tool. You need to still have inspiration to bring up ideas towards the organization.
The wow effect,
Why, the wow effect, the why you do it, and how it will be really efficient for your organization. The McKinsey slides you talked about before, it's a big bag, but you need to take your fair share of this big bag. So we talk about an industry-wide added value, but not all the companies are going to take their fair share on this. So I think, as we said, the purpose, the governance, so the discipline, and the culture, so how people are inspired by AI and how they're going to use it on a day-to-day basis. For me, that's really what is going to drive the efficiency. Then how this is going to move forward? Will it be linear? Will it be a continuous improvement? I think that it depends on the culture of each organization. I mean, some of them are really centralized, governed. Some of them are more decentralized, a little bit wide. This is really cultural then.
It's a good point. I just wanted also to highlight on this, what is the usual good execution, of this type of project. It's usually we target 3 months to actually bring that muscle, to a good fit. And this is difficult. To be honest, this is difficult to get a company to get that fast from start to finish. That's why we have this type of models where we push a selected team of doers and early adopters next to the campus, or even sometimes to take them on a 6 months, I would not say retreat, but they're basically going to get a little bit disconnected. And that requires a sponsorship, that requires leadership to basically understand why this team is taking a step back to have, to come back stronger on those models. Just for the conclusion, that's system. So what we discovered, just to summarize, we wanted to tackle a maturity framework that is adapted to commercial ops, because there is a ton of opportunity there, and it is a scattered world where everyone is bringing his preferred tools to the table and asking IT if they can deploy it. And that's not going to cut it for long. And on the other hand, you cannot just wait on Microsoft and Salesforce to go tackle all the niche business cases. So it has been a very, very complicated transformation for those 2 departments or 3 departments that concern commercial ops. We heard from Stefan and we heard from Mokhtar that there are some principles that are always true. Whenever you've done transformation from 10 years ago, or you're in a job in a pharma company or in a bank to do it now, it's going to be requiring the same reflexes: buying from the senior leadership, goal settings, having an understanding of the culture to adopt data, because it starts with data, like Mokhtar said, and also being a bit of a curious believer, I would say, as a persona, that you need to be kind of excited, kind of driven, and also a force of moving things, because this is a field that goes very quick, so you cannot wait 9, 12, 18 months to move on this. You need to bring that energy back in the company. Any word to conclude this? Maybe Mokhtar, to finish on you, and then Stefan, the word of the conclusion for you.
No, just thank you for sharing the maturity framework that you've been elaborating. I think it's a great way to support companies and give them some food for thought and some ways to operate something that is still very wild and young and free. So that's I think very inspiring to have that vision from you about this. So looking forward to collaborate with you on, especially on the data side that we discussed as a strong and very critical foundation to advance that type of capability, and really happy to have had the opportunity to exchange with Stefan as well about this, and looking forward for the next steps.
Yeah, makes sense. You, Stefan, any words for the audience and people who wants to follow up with you?
Yeah, no, thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss this. Like Mokhtar said, I think the framework is quite helpful. Kind of what I would encourage people to be thinking about with this technology is it's like having your own PhD intern. But just like an intern, you have to train them. You have to give them the business context. You have to kind of help them understand what's going on, and it'll take time. But the more you put in, the more you get out of that new person that just joined your team. And that's the way I look at this. And so if you need any guidance on how to go about doing that, how to help your team kind of really embrace, because now each of you has one additional employee, if you will, available in your organization. And the question is, how do you use that to really multiply the impact you can have for patients? And that's my challenge to each of you is, how do you do that? And if you need help, reach out. We're here to kind of support you to navigate this and help you kind of find the path to get to that fifth level of maturity.
Yeah. Thank you both for joining, and we'll be sharing your details for anyone who wants to reach out to you guys. And based on that first series that we restarted, because we've done it in the past, but what we wanted to do is listening from you guys. If you have a topic, anything that you want us to tackle, answer, challenge, and you want us to bring people from any industry and having a real debate, bringing experts, not just a parade of brand names, but really, really tackling those issues and bringing real case studies on the screen, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be using my network and finding the right people to bring on board, like we did with Stefan and Mokhtar. Thank you again for your time on this. And if you want to follow this, we have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to if you want to be following further episodes, and we'll be also streaming on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, you know what to do. To the next episode then. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.